What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Propability. We're going to take a data-driven look into some of these props for UFC Vegas 55. Holm going against Ketlen Vieira. Looking forward to keep the ball rolling. So the spreadsheet's been on fire as of late. Really good week last week. 6 out of 6 bets that we gave out last week cashed, including the PP, the probability parlay, and hopefully we can come up with another one here on this card. I'm here as always with Weezy. Weezy, how you doing? You looking forward to this one?
Yeah, it's not the best card, but there are some spots. I mean, as I've went through every one of these fights, I've found some spots that make sense when we look at the divisional finish rates, the data of the two fighters involved, and the implied probability of the lines. And that's the great thing about having all the information in one place. We can do all the analysis on one page. All the numbers are there, and it gives us an opportunity to really find out when the bookies have messed up pricing this thing, or when the market has taken it too far and has left us with an opportunity. Now, we're doing this show on Thursdays, Brady, so we know that some of these lines come out as early as Sunday night on 5 dimes. So a lot of these lines do move, but it's not necessarily a bad thing to wait, because sometimes the perception of the market, when they don't have access to all this information that we're going to provide today, can push lines too far. And then it's our job to make that pendulum swing back to the middle when it gives us value on either side when it goes two ways. So too far one way. So let's find some opportunities. Let's find some value today, and let's cash some more tickets.
Let's do it. That is always the goal, no matter how not great the card is. But looking forward to making some money as always. Before we get into it, if you guys can please hit the like button, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. Goal is to get that 1K subs in the near future. So if you are not subscribed and you do enjoy the content, be sure to subscribe. Let us shout out the chat real quick, and then we'll begin. Mushroom, first one in the chat hanging up. What is up, Mushroom? We got Brandon in the chat, as always, taking notes. I love it. Gerald in the chat, Prince of Mischief. We have Ian, JP62, Smooth Cat, hanging out with us. We have Cody saying, where are they at? We are right here, Cody. Thank you for tuning in. We have Paul Pierce. We got the GOAT, Tajik Bey, hanging out, MMA Code. We got Rob and the Die Hard MMA Podcast. Clint, what is up, Clint? How you doing? And yeah, we got Chris in the chat as well. So yeah, ready to go, guys. Let's talk through these. And as always, we'll start with the very first fight of the night. And guys, we're going to be using the Bet Online props for the most part. If Bet Online does not have them out, we'll go to another book that's available. But mostly it's going to be Bet Online that we're looking at here. So the first fight of the night is going to be Elise Reed going against Sam Hughes. The over-under, of course, is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is minus 350. Under 2.5 plus 275. The fight goes to decision, sitting at minus 335. This is on 5 dimes, and the fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at plus 255. It's got to be the most juice. The fight goes to decision line on the card, Weezy.
Plus 255 you got for fight doesn't go, and for fight for fight goes you got minus 335.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's roll. So yeah, this is a big time juice to the over line, and it's interesting. See, we got the Elise Reed row right here. We got the Sam Hughes row right here. And then we've got the combined. So we see the 2 of 5 wins coming inside the distance for Reed, 4 of 5 for Hughes. So they've got a 60% finish rate in 10 wins combined. They've got a 60% finish rate in 5 losses combined. So that means a 60% finish rate in their pro wins and losses. That is 31% better than the implied probability of the fight doesn't go to decision line. But when we move over here to the right side of the sheet and we look at the UFC numbers here, 5 combined fights, 2 of them have finished inside the distance. That's 40%. So that's given us about a 12% edge over the implied probability of the line, which up here we can see is 28% at plus 255. So, the books are trying to get us to bet this fight doesn't go to decision here, because I think stylistically, when you look at Reed Hughes, you think of a striking match, maybe a little bit of clinch battle that probably goes to decision. But the bookies are a little bit ahead of us, but not a crazy amount ahead of us here, Brady. We see here, this number over here that I got highlighted, 69.9%, is the amount of 115-pound strawweight fights that are 3 rounds that have went to decision since 2013. So the benchmark sitting right there at 70%. And we're paying 77% for this fight goes to decision line. So we're overpaying about 7% based on the the divisional decision rate. And then when we look down here at the combined fights that have went to decision, we see 3 of 5. That's 60%. We're overpaying on that fight goes to decision line by about 17%. So while I wouldn't want to bet the fight doesn't go to decision line, what the prop template is telling us is, yeah, that's where the value is. And it kind of makes sense because when you look at these two fighters, your eyes are telling you this probably goes to decision. And the market kind of agreed with us, and they've pushed this line, to plus 255 for fight doesn't go to minus 335 for fight goes. It's really hard to bet minus 335 fight goes to decision lines. So, I would say that if you want to be cheeky, if you want to be a contrarian, you're betting that this fight finishes inside the distance. But for me, it's kind of a stay away, Brady.
Yep, I think it's a stay away as well. So we can kind of move on from that. Next fight, we have a very interesting one. We have Felipe Colares going against Chase Hooper. The over-under is set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 160, and the under 2.5 is plus 130. The fight goes decision is minus 140, and the fight doesn't go decision is plus 110. This was one we talked about on Sunday on Stat Diggers. We talked about liking the fight goes to decision, and we'll talk about why here, Weezy.
Yeah, so we look right here at the fight doesn't go to decision bar, which is all this stuff that you're seeing right here. 15 of 20 combined pro fights for these guys have finished inside the distance in their wins. However, these guys have 5 combined pro losses, and neither one of them has ever been finished. And I mean, Felipe Colares has almost comedic durability. This guy can take such a spectacular beating and keep going. It's unbelievable. That Montel Jackson fight felt like it was about 45 minutes long with how many shots Colares took. And I can't believe that fight didn't get stopped. And even the Luke Sanders fight, he just Homer Simpsoned him. Luke just beat the shit out of him for 7 minutes and then just gassed and lost the second half of the fight, lost the fight. And Chase Hooper, we've seen it since the Contender Series fight. You can hit this guy over and over and over again in the face, and it doesn't even look like it bothers him. So we've got 2 really, really durable fighters here, Brady. So that is something that always lends us to want to go for that fight goes to decision because, it really doesn't matter how good of a finisher you are. If the person that you're fighting never gets finished, it makes it, statistically significant amount more difficult to finish a durable fighter. So we see here that 57.7% of their combined fights have finished inside the distance. But when we look at the UFC numbers here, we see that it's only 2 out of 10, Brady. 2 out of 3 finishes for Hooper have been inside the distance of some really low-level competition, to be honest. And then we see that Colares has 2 decision wins and 3 decision losses. So definitely a decisionator in Colares and a guy in Hooper who's never been finished and has finished 2 of the lower-level opponents. So 20% of these guys' fights are finishing inside the distance. So according to the prop template here, the fight doesn't go to decision at plus 110. That's a 47% implied probability. So we're overpaying by 27.6% for the fight doesn't go to decision. So when we go down here, we see obviously all 5 of their losses have went to decision at the UFC level, and 8 of 10 of their combined fights, and there's 5 each, have went to decision. I've seen the scorecards. That's 80%. That's 23% better than the divisional decision rate, which is 57%. And it's 21.7% better than the implied probability of the line, which is 58.33%. And we're only overpaying on that line by 1.37%. Usually, when we have that big of an advantage for the fight goes or the fight doesn't go, like, for instance, if I were to click over here to a fight like Morales-Medic that's a little more juiced, you see, like, you're going to overpay by 16% for the fight doesn't go, and you're going to overpay by 15% for the under 2.5. Well, we've got something, that's really similar in this particular case because you've got only 2 of the 10 fights that have finished inside the distance. So to only overpay on the fight goes to decision by 1.37% tells us that there's still some value here. And, the important thing about this template, about sometimes looking at it early, is that fight goes to decision, I think, opened at plus money.
Yeah.
So when we have that information early, Brady, it makes it even more bettable. But even though this line has moved quite a bit and the market has seen the value in this line, they haven't pushed it too far. We can still get on minus 140 at fight goes to decision and say that we didn't overpay for it. And I'm willing to do that this week.
Yeah, I like it. And then also on top of that, FanDuel actually has the best price out there. It's sitting at minus 134, so even a better price there on FanDuel Sportsbook.
What's that?
Minus 130,
really?
Minus 134 at FanDuel, yeah.
Minus 134. I love that, because at that minus 134, we're only overpaying by 0.3%, and it's even better now for the fight goes to decision. It's a 22.7% edge. Gotta love that. That's probably going in the probability parlay, is the over 2.5 or the fight goes to decision for Colares Hooper.
Man, and Brandon saying on yesterday was actually plus 105 on Caesars. My goodness.
Yeah, and that's why I think when the MMA Engine website opens, Brady, and we're ready, this prop template is going to be there, before Stat Diggers, so we're going to be able to jump on these lines for the MMA Engine paying customers that will have access to this probability template. This is where we're really going to slay these bookies, brother.
My goodness, yeah, for sure. Mushroom, Hooper will need a sledgehammer to knock out. You need more than a sledgehammer, unless he comes in there with like a fake cast.
Yeah, I think he needs a gun. I think Colares is he could be like the Brazilian 50 Cent, where he gets shot 15 times outside of a nightclub and then winds up fighting 3 months later, and it's like a 15-minute war.
I agree. Clint saying Chase Hooper by calf slicer plus 10,000. Yeah, I think if the fight does end, it is probably Hooper by sub. That's sitting at plus 500. Calf slicer sitting at plus 10,000. And the mushroom liking that Colares by decision. So yeah, there we go. We're liking the fight goes decision there. I'll move on to the next fight. We have Jonathan Martinez going against Vince Morales. We have the over under once again set at 2.5. The over 2.5 minus 240. The under 2.5 is plus 190. The fight goes to decision, sitting at minus 190, and the fight doesn't go to decision, is sitting at plus 155. Weezy, what is sticking out on this one?
Okay, so this fight is a bantamweight fight, 135 pounds. Bantamweight fights are finishing inside the distance 49.43% of the time. Now, we're going to go over to the right side of the spreadsheet here, because we've got a decent sample size of fights for these two guys. 16 combined UFC fights. 3 of 9 and 3 of 7 for these two guys have finished inside the distance. That's 6 of 16, 37.5%. That's 11% worse, or 12% worse than the finish rate of the division, which is 49%. And it's 1.7% worse than the implied probability of the line of 39.22%. So they're kind of onto us here in that this fight should probably go to decision. As we see, the fight doesn't go to decision, is underpriced by 10.2% based on the divisional finish rate, and that the fight goes to decision at minus 190 is 15% overpriced based on the divisional decision rate of 50.57%. So even though I think this fight goes to decision, it looks like the bookies are onto us. And here, if we look at the bottom half of the sheet, we'll see that 4 of their 7 losses have went to decision. 6 of their 9 combined wins have went to decision. So that is 10 of 16 combined UFC fights have went to decision. That's 62.5%. That is 11% more than the divisional decision rate. And we're overpaying by about 3% based on the line. So overpaying by 3% isn't that bad. It means that because we're overpaying by 3% based on the fight goes, and we're overpaying by 1.7% based on the fight doesn't go, that the line is fairly priced. But if you feel this fight goes to decision, minus 190 is a little bit juiced. You're overpaying by 15% based on that divisional finish rate, and overpaying just a little bit based on their individual decision rates. So when it's priced perfectly, I don't see something in the data, Brady. Like, for instance, both of these guys are somewhat durable. 4 of 7 losses of decision, 3 of 7 inside the distance. Neither one of them is fantastic finishers either, but they've both landed knockouts. The time props just kind of feel like like there's no value either way.
Yeah, it feels like it goes to decision. Both guys, like I said, very durable. But would it shock me if there is a finish? Not really. Am I running to the window to lay minus 190, minus 210 on FanDuel? Not really. I think it's just smart to pass, sit back and watch this one, but should be a fun fight. Let us move on to a very, very fun fight. We have Omar Morales going against Uros Medic, the over-under. Looks like it is set at 2.5. So the over 2.5 is plus 130. The under 2.5 is minus 160. The fight goes to decision is plus 160, and the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 200. So this is a very interesting one, Weezy. We talk about it like every few weeks. These kill or be killed fighters, and we love to bet violence on fighters like this. And Medic, a guy that has never been over the 1.5 round mark, he kind of fits that build.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I highlighted the Medic row. 7 of 7 wins inside the distance. 1 of 1 losses inside the distance. So 8 of his 8 pro fights have all finished inside the distance. Killer be killed fighter. Has he ever seen a third round, Brady?
He has not.
Has he ever been over 7.5 minutes?
He has not.
How about that? So, I mean, right there, you're just a daredevil, and I've always said that line between daredevil and dumbass is so thin, Brady. So when you're being a daredevil, you're always very close to being a dumbass. And a daredevil is the kind that says, you know what, I think maybe this is the first time Medic goes to decision. Well, if you're going to go against the trend like that, you need to get paid for it, right? And right now, we're showing for the fight doesn't go to decision minus 200, 66.67%. So we're overpaying 16.3% based on the divisional finish rate here, which is 50.37%. So that's 66.67% minus 50.37%. We get that minus 16.3%. We're overpaying there. And if we look here, the problem with the numbers here is that 5 of the 9 combined UFC fights have finished inside the distance. That's only 55.6%. So we're overpaying by 11.1%. But the thing is, we would expect to overpay because we have a killer be killed fighter, and because you'd have to be crazy to bet that a fight is going to go to decision when one of the guys involved has never been past 7.5 minutes. And he comes from a regional scene where we know the level of competition isn't even close to what you see at this level. So this is definitely one where I'm thinking fight doesn't go to decision. The under 2.5 we get at minus 160 right now. Actually, where did we get that, Brady? Did we get plus money on under 2.5 for this fight?
No, it opened up at plus money, like minus 125 around there.
Yeah, okay. I think you got minus 115 and maybe I got minus 125 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's moved all the way to minus 160. We're still overpaying 15.3% based on that line, but we got a killer be killed fighter. So I still think it's a pretty good shot. And the under 1.5 at plus 125 is another very interesting way to look at this fight. Instead of risking 2 units to win 1, you can risk like 0.8 units to win 1. So it's a reduction in your risk of about 60% on what you're putting out to win 1 unit. And in order to do that, Brady, when you have that Medic type in there, it's actually a good look because Medic has never been over 1.5. So you're paying, a 44.44% implied probability, to go under 1.5 when all of Medic's fights have been under 1.5. So it's like you're getting a huge break there. So while minus 200 is good for fight doesn't go and minus 160 for under 2.5 is even better, I think the best line, not necessarily a parlayable line, but a bettable line, is the under 1.5 at plus 125.
Yeah, we talked about it with Torres last week. Like the guy Torres, I think he's been to decision like 1 time in his entire career. Kind of the same thing here. We have Medic, who, like you said, he's been to the second round once in that fight. In the second round, it ended within the first 50 seconds of that second round. So, like under 1.5, we're getting plus money for it. Lay down a lot less than minus 200. The fight doesn't go, which I still think is solid at that price. I think there's a couple of different ways to play it. The under 1.5. The fight won't start round 3 on DraftKings. It's sitting at minus 135. Medic has never been to round 3. I think that's a way to play it. But yeah, when we get these killer be killed fighters, like you said, it's a risk betting those fight goes to decisions and those overs. Like, we've never seen it. So why should we bet it, right?
Yeah, why should we bet it? Unless the book is just begging us to bet it and they're giving us, all this value. They're giving you a big plus money opportunity. Then sometimes it if they're paying you to do it, that's when you do it, But in this case, they're just not really paying you to do it. And you know how it goes sometimes, Brady, with these killer be killed fighters. If you're saying they've never been over 1.5, just bet the under 1.5, because if it goes over 1.5, chances are it's just going to go the full 15, because it's the opponent that they're fighting that is giving them a different fight than what they're used to. And we know that Morales takes his time. He likes to counter strike. He will wait. And he's not going to exactly march you down a lot of the time either, especially against Giga Chikadze, who actually trains with Uros Medic over at King's MMA. So, while Uros is training for this fight, he's getting notes from a guy that's already beaten Omar Morales and is training with him. So in this fight, I'm going to suggest that the under 1.5 is the best bet. It's not necessarily, you don't want to be parlaying plus money bets too often, but I think that's a good individual spot to reduce your risk. 0.8 units to win one is a lot better than 2 units to win one.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my favorite spot in the world. I did go pretty small on it because of the Morales side. Like you said, he's not as aggressive as I want to see. He doesn't go for his takedowns as much as I'd like to see, but it's a spot that I do like, and it's a spot that I would bet, any day of the week with the Medic side especially. But I do like that. Let's keep moving on to the next fight. We have Jailton Almeida going against Parker Porter. Cannot wait for this one. We have Jailton. We have the over/under set at 1.5. The over 1.5 plus 120. The under 1.5 is minus 150. The fight goes to decision is plus 275, and the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 365. So this one's interesting. We have Almeida, who is a minus 600 favorite, and this is a guy in 15 wins. He's actually never won a fight that has went over 1.5 rounds. Only one fight in his career went over that 1.5, and he lost that fight. So how I'm kind of looking at this fight, Weezy, is I think if Almeida wins, it's under 1.5. And if this goes over 1.5, I think Parker's probably really live to win the fight. But just a really interesting fight from a time prop perspective here.
Yeah, and I mean, like that's what we call missing information, right? How does Jailton do when went past the 7.5 minute mark? Well, he's got 17 pro fights and only one has went past the 1.5 or 7.5 minute mark, and he happened to have lost that fight. That's valuable information. What else is valuable information, Brady, is that Jailton Almeida is a killer be killed fighter. 15 of 15 wins inside the distance. 1 of 2 losses inside the distance. 17 pro fights, 94.1% of them have finished inside the distance. And for Porter, it's 13 of 19. So we're looking at 80.6% of these guys' combined professional fights have finished inside the distance. A very big number, a number that screams violence. That's 2.1% better than the implied probability of the fight doesn't go to decision line, and 17% better than the finish rate of heavyweight fights. 3 of these guys' 6 combined UFC fights, though, have finished inside the distance, and so that's only 50%. And when we're paying 78.49% on the implied probability of the line, we have to be aware that based on Parker Porter's experience, that we're overpaying for the fight doesn't go by 28.5%. And then even the under 1.5, minus 150. So that they're saying this fight goes under 1.5 rounds 6 out of 10 times. And that is 16% more than what these fights actually do go under 1.5 on the long term in the heavyweight division. 271 heavyweight 3-round fights since 2013, and just under 44% of them have finished under 1.5. For this line, we're paying 60%. So even the under 1.5 overpriced by 16%. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 365, overpriced by 15%, and overpriced by 28% based on their UFC competition. So this could be something where you're obviously not parlaying it, Brady, but you might look for an over that's underpriced, because the over 1.5, you're getting plus money. that means you're only paying 45.45% implied probability, but 59% of heavyweight fights go over 1.5 rounds. And we got to remember, Jailton Almeida is not a heavyweight. He's a light heavyweight. And he's fighting a guy with the biggest ass in the UFC who cuts weight to make 265. So, this could be a situation where some of the jiu-jitsu technique that Almeida uses that works on men that are 205 pounds might not work on a guy whose ass has its own orbit. So this might be one where you look to get a little bit different, where you look to be contrarian, because paying minus 365 on anything is very risky. I understand if you think this fight is finishing inside the distance. I'm just kind of telling you, there's not much value in making this bet right here.
Yeah, it makes
the
sense.
The fight doesn't go bet, I mean.
Yeah, I actually bet the under 1.5 at minus 125. The reason being is because we have Almeida. He's minus 600. And instead of laying the minus 600, why not take Almeida, take the under 1.5 rounds, right? Like Almeida, 15 wins. He's never won over 1.5. And I'm actually concerned if the fight does go over 1.5, what's the fight going to look like? So I did pull the trigger on the under 1.5, minus 125. Minus 150 is definitely getting up there, but the fight doesn't go minus 365. Looks like that is actually the best price available. Minus 400 on DraftKings. I think it does finish, but I think if it does finish, it's more so on the Almeida side. I think if Porter wins, like people are saying in the chat, Porter by decision. I know Clint has that split decision for Porter at plus 4,000. But I think the most likely scenario is Almeida does get him out of there in the first round. But yeah, those Porter decision props are crazy.
They are. They really are. I mean, and it's a heavyweight fight, so it's a different story. You just never know. A lot of people love these contender series fades, but when one of these contender series guys comes out and they look like Jailton Almeida for a fight or two, then they forget about the fade, but they're still a contender series guy. So, taking on a much bigger guy, it's going to be very interesting. But the violence props on this one are so juiced, Brady. I like what you did at minus 125. That's a difference of 4.5% implied probability, and that makes a difference over the long term. So, and I think it's a great way to bet that Jailton violence is to say, I'm not just betting the Jailtons, or I don't have to just bet the Jailton side because that's already juiced. I'll just take Porter as well, take the violence side, and it makes sense. But at this particular price at minus 150, it just kind of feels like a stay away. And if you want to throw that over 1.5 in there at plus 120 as a way to get a little bit different and suggest that maybe Jailton can't get a heavyweight out of there in 7.5 minutes, maybe go for that. But otherwise, this is just feeling like it's a stay away.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. What a freaking weird fight, but I'm excited to watch it for sure. We'll move on to the next fight. We have Joseph Holmes going against Alen Amedovski. Speaking of a weird fight, man, we have two guys who are not that great, and off the bat, Bootsy is like an Alen Amedovski, the 34-year-old coming off a 3-year layoff. The over/under is set at 1.5 rounds on most books. The over 1.5 minus 140. The under 1.5 is plus 110. I completely agree with them setting at 1.5. The fight goes to decision is plus 190, and the fight doesn't go to decision is minus 240. We have another guy here back-to-back. Well, not back-to-back, but close to back-to-back. In Alen Amedovski, this guy, killer be killed fighter. This is a guy that goes in there. He wants to go in there and stand and bang with you. His ground game does not look great. I think just, stylistically, Amedovski by knockout or Holmes by a sub, and I think it happens early. Both these guys are finishers. I'm sure we're going to talk about those numbers, right, Weezy?
Yeah, they're both finishers. 15 of their 15 combined wins have all been inside the distance. Holmes 7 of 7, Amedovski 8 of 8, but only 1 of 4 losses coming inside the distance. So even though this fight does scream violence, we have to be a little bit careful, but we can also keep in mind a little bit of information that we do have access to, Brady. One of those decision losses for Amedovski came to Krzysztof Jotko. And I told you a couple weeks ago, I had news that Jotko had woke up, had a banana, ate half of it, and couldn't even finish the banana. Went to his wife and said, listen, can you finish this? So he couldn't finish a glass of water. He couldn't finish a banana in the morning. How is he going to finish Alen Amedovski? And then one of the decision losses to Joseph Holmes was to Jamie Pickett, who's, a very slow-paced fighter who likes to win minutes up against the cage and kind of grind fights out. So the 1 of 4 combined losses that have went to decision, we can give a caveat on each side as to why that's not as important as the 15 of 15 wins, because neither one of these guys is what I would call a fighter that takes a minute to get into the fight. They kind of both come out fast. I think this sets up stylistically to be a violent fight, and the numbers are telling us the same thing. 16 of these guys' 19 combined pro fights have finished inside the distance, 84.2%. That is 13.6% better than the implied probability of the line. And then when we go over here to the UFC stats, there's only 4 combined fights. 2 of them have finished inside the distance. And like I say, the 2 fights that didn't were Amadovsky's fight against Jotko and Holmes' fight against Pickett. So at 70.59%, the minus 240 fight doesn't go to decision line. It's overpriced by 15.42% based on the implied probability of the line. But when we see the 84.2% finish rate over here in their combined pro wins, and then we add in the fact that we got Amadovsky, finishing 9 of 10 fights inside the distance, and for Holmes, it's 7 of 9. We know that we've got 2 killer-be-killed fighters here. We've got a line that's, underpriced in implied probability by about 5% compared to the line that we just looked at for Porter Almeida. And we've got 2 very similar archetypal fighters here, is that they both finish and they both get finished too. So I'm going to say that the fight doesn't go to decision here at minus 240 is one of my favorite bets. The under 2.5, we're getting at minus 170. That is a break of about 8% in implied probability, more like 7.5%. That's a very big break to get, because we can see here that 55% of the fights finish inside the distance, but 49.43 finish under 2.5. So there's a 5% difference, 5.5% difference there, but they're giving us almost 8% break. So the under 2.5 is a little bit better than the minus 240 that we're getting for fight doesn't go. The under 1.5 at plus money is okay, but it's not juicy enough for me to not want that extra 5 minutes to go to the under 2.5 here. So definitely liking the fight doesn't go. Definitely liking the under 2.5. We got 100% finish rate and 15 combined wins, and we've got in Amedovski a guy who is so killer be killed that this feels like a really safe bet.
Yep, 100% finish rate on each side. And just like I said, stylistically, you have the striker in Amedovski who's going to try to take your head off. And then you have Holmes, who also has okay striking, okay power, but, brown belt and BJJ. I don't think Amedovski has a great ground game. So, yeah, I think this fight does finish pretty early here. I did bet the fight doesn't go to decision straight at minus 230 on Monday. It hasn't moved as much as I thought it would, but actually just moved to on Bet Online. It's now minus 260. So, looks like the best price out there is on 5 dimes at minus 245 there. I guess another thing that stuck out was the fight won't start round 3 at minus 136 on FanDuel. That is the best price out there by a lot. On DraftKings, it's minus 165. And then on 5 dimes, it is minus 155 there. So, yep, I'm with you. Violence here, and I think this fight finishes, and I think both these guys keep their 100% finish rates. All right, let's keep moving on. Before we do so, if y'all can hit the like button, subscribe here to the MMA Engine, getting really close to that 1,000 subscribers. If we can get there maybe in the next couple weeks, that'd be awesome. Thank you guys so much for that and all the support. You guys have been absolutely killing it. We'll move on to our next fight, though. We have Jung Park going against Eryk Anders. We have the over-under is set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 215. The under 2.5 is plus 175. The fight goes to decision is minus 180. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 150. Interesting one here, Weezy.
Yeah, so this is one that we were talking about just before we went live here. And, we're paying premiums for the fight goes to decision here, 19.46%, a 17.68% premium on the over 2.5, and a 14.33% premium on the over 1.5. So we know that the bookies don't want us betting fight goes in this particular spot. So here's what we've got. We've got 18 fight sample size between Park and Anders in the UFC. Anders' fights have finished inside the distance 5 of 13 times. Park's fights have finished inside the distance 2 of 5 times. So 7 of 18 combined fights finishing inside the distance. That is 38.9%. And we're seeing that we're paying a fight doesn't go to decision at 150 is 40%. So plus 150, 40% implied probability. These guys are finishing 38.9%. So we are overpaying by 1.1% for the fight doesn't go to decision. And for the fight goes to decision, we see that 10 of 18 of their combined fights have finished or have went to decision. That's 61.1%. That's 16% better than the divisional decision rate, which is sitting around 45%. And we're overpaying based on this one by about 3.2% based on the implied probability of the line. And another thing that kind of makes this tricky, Brady, is we see here that at the UFC level, Anders has been pretty durable. He's been finished in 2 of 6 losses. But the problem is Park, well, he's never finished anybody at the UFC level. He's been finished in both of his losses. So when the time props are priced as perfectly as these are right now, my suggestion would be maybe pick Anders inside the distance because Park has been finished in both of his losses, or pick Park by decision because Anders has been pretty durable and because Park has never finished anybody at the UFC level. But in terms of the time props, they're priced pretty well here. I wouldn't necessarily mind overpaying 3.2% for the fight goes to decision here, but it's still minus 180. The time props just feel like they're perfectly priced, Brady, and it's nothing screaming at me to bet this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it goes to decision. Looks like FanDuel opened up the fight goes to decision today at minus 150. It's now minus 164. Does that change anything?
Minus 164 takes us to an implied probability of 62.12%. So at that price, we're only overpaying by 1% instead of 3.2%. Makes it a little bit more palatable. Yeah, I could bless a minus 164 bet for fight goes to decision here. It'll be a bit of a sweat. You know, I mean, Anders hits hard, and Jun Young Park's got some pretty good grappling. So, yeah, it's a stay away. I think if you're on that Park side, bet him by decision. And I think if you're on that Anders side, maybe just rock the money line. Or if you want to look for a big money bet, try him inside the distance. But other than that, man, the time props are not great for this one.
Yep, I'm definitely staying away from that one. We'll move on to the next one. We have MMA Twitter's fight of the week. I could have swear, man, I've seen hundreds of posts of this fight all week, and like there's so many good fights on this card in the main event. You know, have Ponzinibbio, Pereira, but all I see is Tabatha, Ricci, and Polyana, Viana, and I'm not sure why, Weezy. I'm just not sure why I'm seeing so much of that on Twitter. But we have the over/under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is minus 160. The fight or the under 2.5 is plus 130. The fight goes to decision minus 140, and the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 110. Yeah, this is a very tricky one. I'm really curious to see what it says about this, Weezy.
Yeah, 15 of these ladies' 18 combined wins have come inside the distance. Polyana Viana has a 100% finish rate in 12 wins. And she's went to decision 4 times and lost 3 of those fights. So Polyana Viana, a moment winner, not a minute winner. Ricci has had 3 of her 6 wins inside the distance, and her only loss as a pro came inside the distance, but it was up a weight class on short notice against one of the best fighters on planet Earth, Manon Fiorot. So this could be a cheeky spot here. 17 of their 23 combined fights have finished inside the distance. That's almost 75%, 43% better than the divisional finish rate, and 26% better than the implied probability of the fight doesn't go to decision line, which is sitting at 47.62%. And we see here 5 of their 8 combined fights in the UFC level have finished inside the distance, 62.5%. That's way better than the UFC finish rate of strawweight fighters, 32% better they're finishing at twice the rate than the division is. The division finishes at 30.1%. Viana and Ricci are finishing at 62.5% wins and losses combined. So there is some value based on those, a smaller sample size of 8 fights, but the fight doesn't go to decision at plus money. You're getting a 15% edge over the books based on this 62.5% finish rate number of the two ladies compared to the 47.62% implied probability of the fight doesn't go line. So the template likes the fight doesn't go. And when we go down here to the fight goes, we see that 3 of the 8 combined fights have went to decision. That's only 37%. The divisional decision rate is 70%. So that's 32% worse than the divisional decision rate. And then we're overpaying for the fight goes to decision line by 20%, which is wild because you don't want to do that at this level. Not, because even though strawweight fights are going to decision 70% of the time, these ladies are only going to decision 3/8 of the time, 37.5%. So it just seems like you don't really want to do this, but we got to remember that they've been pretty durable. It's been Viana has been to decision 3 times in her 4 losses. So, it might be difficult for Ricci to get a finish here because Viana hasn't been very easy to finish. She's only been submitted by Veronica Macedo. That's her only loss inside the distance. So if you are betting the fight doesn't go to decision here, you're betting against two pretty durable fighters. So, but still, the prop template is telling us that the value is on that plus 110 for the fight doesn't go.
Yeah, I mean, it's one I'm just going to stay away from. And I guess, if somebody likes the fight doesn't go to decision, maybe like the fight ends by submission is plus 200. I don't really see either fighter knocking either. I think if this fight finishes, it's probably by submission. Viana submitted in her only a finished loss. And then if Viana wins, it's going to be like an armbar from guard. So I think the fight ends by submission was tempting at plus 200.
Yeah, I think that's a really good bet. That might be something I look into because this fight is screaming violence, but both of these ladies are grapplers first and strikers second. So you would and Viana has been submitted. So and we know that Viana with her 100% finish rate is capable of getting submissions herself. So yeah, that's a pretty good look. Fight ends by submission. I might sprinkle that.
Yep, that's plus 200 on DraftKings, and then we're plus 195 on FanDuel. I think that's an interesting way to play it. We will keep moving on, though. We have Chidi and Jukwani going against Dusko Todorovic. The over/under is set at. Do they have an over/under out there?
Dude, I didn't see one. I only saw fight starts round 2. You know what? You're gonna have to go to FanDuel. FanDuel might have time props out now on this one, but it's not showing up on best fight odds.
Yeah, I'm sure DraftKings has it. I'm going to check it now. So DraftKings has the over/under set at 1.5. The over 1.5 is minus 170, and the under 1.5 is plus 140. Weird that they don't have the over/unders out yet, but yeah, DraftKings has them out and it's set at 1.5. So the fight goes to decision, and this is on 5 dimes. The fight doesn't go is minus 205, and the fight goes is plus 165. So, yeah, Weezy, what do you see in this one?
So for the fight doesn't go, we're overpaying by about 12%. So we've got 7 combined fights for Njokuani and Todorovic at the UFC level. That includes the Contender Series fights. 5 of them have finished inside the distance. That's 71%. That's 16% better than what the finish rate of the division is, and 4.2% better than the implied probability of the line at 67.21%. So the prop template kind of blesses the violence bet here. And we've got 31 of their 42 combined fights have finished inside the distance. And look at this, Brady. 7 of 9 combined losses. 6 of Njokuani's 7 losses coming inside the distance, and 1 of 2 for Todorovic. And I kind of feel like if Todorovic gets this fight to the ground, he's live to finish down there, and that Njokuani's absolutely live to finish on the feet too. So, yeah, we're getting a 6.6% edge over the implied probability of the line, based on the 31 of 42 fights finishing for these two guys. So that's 73.8%, 6.6% better than the 67.21% implied probability of minus 205. And like we said, 5 of 7 UFC fights finishing inside the distance, that's 4.2% better. We're only overpaying by 12% based on the implied probability of the line. That's not horrible. So while it's not screaming from the rooftops for me to bet this, minus 205 feels like it could be a decent parlay piece and a fairly safe bet for this fight, not seeing the scorecards.
Yeah, it could be, but that's on 5 dimes, unfortunately, that's minus 205. That's the best price by a mile. Looks like FanDuel has minus 250, and then DraftKings has minus 225 on the fight doesn't go. So
minus 225 would be 2 more percent of implied probability. Minus 250, there's no way I could bless that at 71.43%, 16% overpriced on the line. And at minus 250, Brady, the implied probability is actually exactly at 71.4%, which is the 5 of 7 fights finishing inside the distance. 71.4, 71.4, perfectly priced, no edge there whatsoever. And then you're paying minus 250. So yeah, I'm going to keep this one out of the parlay. I don't hate the violence bet here. It's just that there's no value on it, so we don't have to chase it.
Yep, I think it finishes, but I'm not running to the window to lay that price tag for sure. So nothing's wrong with passing. You don't have to bet every fight. Move on to the next fight. We have the co-main event. We have Michel Pereira going against Santiago Ponzinibbio. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 170. The under 2.5 is plus 140. The fight goes to decision minus 150, and the fight doesn't go to decision is plus 120. Another one of these fights where you have two guys, and they're both very, very durable.
Yeah, 5 of their 16 combined losses have been inside the distance. That's only 31.3%. 38 of 55 wins. So they got a 70% finish rate between the two of them, just under 70%. So we see about almost 60% of their fights finish inside the distance. It's about 13% better than the implied probability of the line. But we've got a good sample size here in the UFC data. And we see here what we usually see when we got big sample sizes, a lot of yellow. Because when we have that much data, it makes it really easy for these books to price these lines. 9 of their 21 combined fights have finished inside the distance. That's 43%, and we're paying 45.45% on the line. That's a perfectly priced line. A perfectly priced line is where we overpay for the fight doesn't go, and we overpay for the fight goes. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're overpaying by 2.9% for the fight goes and by 2.6% based on the fight doesn't go. And yeah, 2 of 6 losses inside the distance. That's about what you'd expect. So this is a huge stay away. I can't tell anybody to bet this line either way. It's like a coin flip, and we don't bet coin flips, Brady.
Yeah, especially laying chalk on coin flips as well. So I'm good with passing. Nothing really sticking out there.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's 11 fights. We don't have to bet every fight. We that's what this template is for. It's to show us when we're getting an advantage. And when we're getting an advantage, we can feel good about making the bet.
100%. Let's see if we can find anything in the main event here. We have Holm going against Ketlen Vieira. We have the over-under is set at, looks like 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5, it juiced all the way up to minus 220. The under 4.5, plus 180. The fight goes to decision, minus 230. And the fight doesn't go to decision, is plus 185. Weezy, I'm really curious to hear the stats for the 5-round fights, because I think we talked about it on Sunday for Stat Diggers about the crazy difference between the weight class in the 3-round finishes and the 5-round finishes.
It's absolutely something that we have to be aware of because it is a 5-round fight. And all these analytics that I've gathered, I stripped out the 5-round fights so that it would be really nice, clean analytics for 3-round fights. And then I was like, oh shit, there's a main event on every card, you know? So I created a 5-round fight database, and I've got that sorted from 2013 up until the current time so that we can look at how fights finish differently in 5-round fights compared to 3-round fights. So for the women's bantamweight division, Brady, we're finishing at 35.62% for 3-round fights. So right now, the fight doesn't go to decision is priced right at 35%, which is right at the divisional finish rate, right, of 35.62%. So we're actually underpaying by 0.53% on that fight doesn't go to decision number. And we've got 20 combined fights between Holm and Lorenzo Lamas here, and 30% of them have finished inside the distance. That's 5.6% worse than the divisional finish rate and 5.1% worse than the implied probability of the line. So it's going to look like we're getting a little better value down here. And we're paying 70% here, which is basically 0.3% better than the implied probability of the line. 4 of their 7 losses have went to decision. So it kind of looks like it's perfectly priced here. But let's figure out what the divisional finish rate is for 135-pound fights in 5-round fights. So let me bring up my spreadsheet here. And this is the women's bantamweight division. And these are all the fights since 2013. Like, for instance, you see here, here's Ronda Rousey against Miesha Tate. That took place in 2013. But I've got it sorted by, wow, there's 5 fights that have finished inside of 1 minute in 5-round fights at the bantamweight division. Rousey Zingano, Rousey Davis, Duranda Ladd, Rousey Correa, Nunez Rousey. So 4 of the 5 fights, and even Rousey McMahon was 106. So we've had a lot of fights finish inside the distance here. And we see that there's 22 fights since 2013, Brady. 16 of them have finished inside the distance.
It's crazy.
16, right? So for this fight, even though your eyes are telling you, well, it's a fight goes to decision bet, when we take 16 and we divide it by 22, that's almost 73% of 5-round bantamweight fights that have finished inside the distance. Now, 2 of them that have went to decision have had Holly Holm in them. Holly Holm against Valentina Shevchenko and Holly Holm against Irene Aldana. But there have also been Holly Holm fights that have finished inside the distance. Nunez Holm, Holm Correa, Holm versus Miesha Tate finished inside the distance in the 5th round. So, oh, wow, no, wait, I'm wrong. It's actually 1 more. It's 17 of 22.
My goodness. What is this, heavyweight?
This is 77%. 77% of 5-round bantamweight women's fights have finished inside the distance.
It's nuts.
And right now, they're giving us an implied probability for the fight doesn't go to decision of 35%, Brady. 0.7727 minus 0.3509 equals a 42.2% edge over the books if we were to bet fight doesn't go to decision at plus 185. Oof. It's a pure analytics bet because when you look at Vieira Holm, you say this probably goes the full 5 rounds, right? You got a point fighter in Holm who does a great job of winning minutes. And you got a woman in Vieira who's kind of like sub or bust. And she actually is a good minute winner too. And when she's getting her grappling game going, if she doesn't get a submission, she's going to win minutes. But at the 5-round, 5-round fights for bantamweight women, they just don't go to decision often at all. So on the analytics, this is a screaming fight doesn't go to decision bet at plus 185.
Yeah,
Crazy,
those numbers.
Right?
Those numbers are I mean, it feels like we're talking about heavyweights here, finishing 17 out of 22. Like that's nuts. But I mean, at the very least, like it makes you want to pat. Like if you're thinking about betting the fight goes to decision, and that's a play you're looking at, and then you look at these numbers, like that should make you want to instantly pass. Like if anything, you do not want to lay minus 230 because like you said, like this fight should go to decision. Holmes should probably win a decision, but Vieira gas tank issues. We saw Vieira get knocked out in the 1st round by Aldana. Like I don't know. I feel like if anything, it would be a small poke on that fight doesn't go to decision, especially hearing those numbers, which is just insane.
Yeah, and that's what's called putting in the work, Brady. I mean, look, that wasn't glamorous. I sat for like 3 straight days just cutting and pasting fights from Wikipedia into a spreadsheet and then separating them by weight class and then separating them. I went back to 2013 and found every 5-round fight, removed that from the 3-round data, separated out the 5-round fights, sorted them, and then you have the information. And nobody is giving out this information, Brady, plain and simple. Dudes like Yanni the Greek, who's a big analytics guy. You listen to this guy on UFC Fight Pass, and he'll say, go out and get your analytics and share them with nobody. You know who does that? Pricks do that. Jerk-offs, selfish people who decide that they don't want to lift up other people. Is that us, Brady? No. We're here to give you the information. We're putting in the work, and we're trying to be, Liam Picks Fights always says, the good guys against the bookies. We're the good guys. We're giving out the information. We're putting in the work. And together, when we share this information and we work together and we put our heads together, that's when we come up with the best bets. And every once in a while, we're going to find something that sticks out like that. It might not happen, but we do know that the analytics are on our side.
Yes, sir. That is what the MMA engine is all about, Weezy. That is what we are all about. So yeah, we did it, Weezy. I guess it's time. It is time for the PP. Before we do so, everybody in the chat, let me know, what is your favorite parlay piece? Whether it's a fight goes to decision, a fight doesn't go, an over and under. Let me know in the chat, what are you liking for a parlay piece? Weezy, I know you wrote some stuff down. What is the biggest things that are sticking out that we can put in our parlay?
So the two things that I circled were the Hooper Colares over 2.5 or the fight goes to decision. 2 of their 10 fights have finished inside the distance at the UFC level. 80% decision rate. We're barely paying juice on that at minus 140. I think that's a great spot to start. The other one that really stuck out was the fight doesn't go to decision for Holmes Amedovski. With Amedovski and Holmes, 2 killer-be-killed fighters, in particular Amadovsky. And then we know that the fights that they've lost that have went to decision, 2 of the 3 were against Jotko and against Pickett, a couple of decisionators. So I like the fight doesn't go to decision here for Holmes Amadovsky. Let's see. And then I like, for not parlay pieces, that Holm Aldana fight doesn't go to decision. How about the fight ends by sub for Ricci Viana at plus 200? And the only other spot that's kind of sticking out is that under 2.5 for Medic Morales. So what is the what is the chat saying?
So, by the way, the parlay, the Hooper fight goes to decision, parlayed with the fight doesn't go to decision in the Holmes fight, is around plus 150.
Plus 150. I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Last week we had the Torres fight doesn't go, parlayed with the
Lee Araujo fight goes,
which was a sweat, but yeah, that was around like minus 112, something like that.
Yeah, minus 112. Yeah, at plus 150, I think that's really good. We got a killer-be-killed fighter in Amedovski, and we've got 2 really durable guys in Hooper Colares, which is the archetype of fighter that we pick for overs. And then we also have, if our listeners want to throw a third leg in there, I could bless the under 2.5 for Medic Morales as well.
Sure, I like it. I like that parlay a lot, and I like that it's plus money too. Brandon saying his favorite is the Holmes fight doesn't go decision. Yeah, that's probably my favorite on the slate as well. I have a straight bet on that. Brandon saying goat show. Appreciate you, Brandon. Daz saying champions and legends, both of you, MMA engine. Thank you, Daz, for always hanging out. Lamar liking the Medic. No round 3 is my favorite prop. I like that. Medic has never seen a round 3. Paul saying Holmes and Amadovsky fight doesn't go. Parlay with Medic Morales fight doesn't go. Plus 108. I like that as well.
I like that as well. Yeah, that's really good. But I think my 2 favorite pieces, Holmes Amadovsky fight doesn't go, fight goes, or over 2.5 for Hooper Colares. And then we got that under 2.5 at Medic Morales at really good prices earlier in the week. But even at this price, the prop template is blessing it, saying it's bettable because we've got in Medic a killer-be-killed fighter, 100% finish rate for and against. So we could do the plus 150, or if you want to add that third leg under 2.5 Medic Morales, or fight doesn't start round 3 Medic Morales, I also bless that.
Sounds good. So we did it. We got the PP. We talked about some spots. Weezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on for the rest of the week. I know we have a week off next week. We're going to be doing a lot of things behind the scenes, getting ready for the release of the website. Can't wait for that. But let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Uncle Weezy. I do balls deep breakdowns of fights. I do a full card breakdown every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Central Time called Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. Give you breakdowns on all the fights. Finish with a greasy 4-leg parlay. My guy Rojuan Yi asked what the greasy parlay is. Go to Just the Tip with Uncle Weezy. At the end on the timestamps, it'll say greasy 4-legger. I got another greasy 4-legger for you guys this week, a little bit better than plus 400. You can find me on Pub Sports Radio every Saturday for the watch along, every Sunday for Stack Diggers, every Wednesday for the DFS show. And you can find me right here on the MMA Engine channel for Probability every Thursday. I do a balls deep breakdown every Monday as well on the MMA Engine channel. And the last thing that we need to do, you guys, stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC Vegas 55. Finish off this maze strong. Keep this winning ball rolling, man.
Let's keep it rolling. Guys, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I will be going live for my final thoughts tomorrow, Friday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Going to be talking some betting, DraftKings, and the weigh-ins as well. The show used to be on my channel, DFS by the Numbers. It is now officially on the MMA Engine YouTube channel. And then other than that, Monk and Lou going live tomorrow as well. And then just make sure I subscribe. We have a ton of different shows throughout the week. So, yeah, no Stat Diggers on Sunday. Going to take the week off. We'll be back next week. And I believe the first card we have back is like Rosenstruck versus Volkov, I think, which should be a decent card. And then after that, we have UFC 275, which is going to be a banger. But yeah, great show, Weezy. Thank you all for hanging out in the chat. I believe this is most people we've had on this show since. Let's keep growing the channel, keep growing the show. Thank you guys for hanging out, and best of luck for UFC Vegas 55. And yeah, let's keep making some money, guys. See ya.